The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask had big shoes to fill. Its predecessor, Ocarina of Time, was nearly flawless for the time. With an expertly designed world, memorable story, and music fitting the game's atmosphere perfectly, it's no wonder Ocarina of Time remains one of the most beloved video games ever made. What was Nintendo supposed to do to top their magnum opus? The answer to this question is Majora's Mask. The development team behind Majora's Mask was given a single year to work on the game. How fitting it is that what emerged was a game focused on strict time limits, with a doomsday timer quite literally looming over your head at all times. Majora's Mask is a game filled with suffering, with the actions of a single troubled individual having disastrous consequences for the entire world. However, the game's focus on side quests over a main story results in a game about helping those in despair and attempting to bring light back to a broken world. Despite the devastation brought into the land of Termina by the Skull Kid, for every family torn apart, for every business ruined, for all the residents of Clocktown at each other's throats, Link is there to stitch the world back together. For every tear shed of sorrow in Majora's Mask, another is shed of joy. Due to the severe time constraints, many assets from Ocarina of Time had to be reused in Majora's Mask, including the music. Koji Kondo, the composer for both games, reused instruments and even entire songs for the sequel, but the two games' soundtracks still evoke entirely different atmospheres. The music of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a double-sided coin. There are plenty of despondent melodies riddled throughout the game, but hidden in the Sea of Dread are islands of hope. Link's journey in Majora's Mask is not to save a princess from a monster, nor is it to defeat a great evil in a battle of light and dark. Instead, his quest is to ease the pain of the people of Termina, including the villain. But Majora's Mask is not exclusively about Link. There's a focus on the supposed antagonist of the game as well, the Skull Kid. The soundtrack to this wonderfully melancholy game illustrates the contrast between Link and the Skull Kid, creating a musical dichotomy that assists the emotional beats of this mournful, gloomy masterpiece. Majora's Mask is well known for being the darkest Zelda game. For the entirety of the 3-day cycle, the moon can be seen looming in the sky from anywhere in Termina, serving as a constant reminder that the world will end in just 72 hours. In each of the 4 regions of Termina, there are people filled with sorrow and despair due to the actions of the Skull Kid. In the southern swamp, the water has been poisoned and the Deku Princess kidnapped, leading to the execution of an innocent monkey. In the Snowhead Mountains, the harsh winter has lasted much longer than normal, and the Goron elder son wails for his lost father. In the Great Bay, the water has warmed, and Lulu's eggs have been stolen by the Gerudo pirates, and in Icona Valley, the dead continue to fight a war that should have ended centuries ago. Link is also personally affected by the Skull Kid, who stole his ocarina and transformed him into a Deku scrub during the prologue cutscene. Link finds himself inside the clock tower at the heart of Clocktown, where he meets a mysterious man known as the Happy Mask Salesman. The Mask Salesman greets him with a famous quote that sums up the atmosphere of Majora's Mask perfectly. "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" He then reveals to Link that the Skull Kid had stolen Majora's Mask from him, a powerful artifact used in ancient hexing rituals. He agrees to return Link to his human form and help him find his ocarina on the condition that he returns Majora's Mask to him. Link pushes open the doors to the clock tower and is greeted with the Clocktown theme. At a first glance, the Clocktown theme doesn't appear too unsettling. It opens with a tambourine establishing the cheery rhythm in a 6/8 time signature, before introducing the main melody played by an English horn. The English horn is supported by a synth string background, and later on in the song, a flute adds some pleasant harmonies on top of the melody. However, this perceived tranquility doesn't last for long. As the moon grows nearer to Termina, the Clocktown theme progresses into a more energetic form. By the second day, the tempo is picked up, and the instrumentation has changed. An ocarina picks up the melody, a viola plays the bass, and frantic accordion arpeggios have been added on top of it all. The increased tempo of the second day gives the song more energy, reflecting the approaching festival of time, and the change in instrumentation ever so slightly throws the listener off, echoing the looming apocalypse. On the morning of the third day, it is clear that Clocktown and all of Termina is in grave danger. The tempo has nearly doubled that of the first day, and the string bass has been replaced with ominous and dissonant synth chords emblematic of the approaching Armageddon. The accordion arpeggios have been substituted by a koto, a traditional Japanese string instrument that is also used in Majora's theme, in contrast with the largely Western instrumentation of the game. The gradual descent of the Clocktown theme into chaos and dissonance represents the rising fear among the inhabitants of the village. Not only has the falling moon induced worry among the inhabitants of Clocktown, it has also spawned discord between the guards and the carpenters. The guards wish to evacuate Clocktown before it's too late, but the carpenters believe that the rumors of a falling moon are a hoax and that the Festival of Time should continue as planned. The two sides have taken their debate to the office of Mayor de Tour, with one of Koji Kondo's favorite pieces from the game in the background. The mayor's meeting consists of two sections, a call and response reminiscent of a heated debate, and a gradually crescendoing section echoing the rise in tension in the room. The former is in 2/4 time with a melody of eighth notes, with the chords moving from C minor in the first measure to G7 in the second before repeating. This endless minor 1 to major 5 motion creates a very angry atmosphere, especially the presence of a B natural in the G7 chord, and a key signature that normally has a B flat. The second section of the song is comprised of two 4-measure phrases, one over an F pedal and one over a C, each with their own rising chords. The solo section has a slight crescendo, further contributing to the idea of an intense argument. Far from the adventurous and optimistic qualities of its predecessor, Hyrule Field, the Termina Field theme presents a disconcerting rendition of the overworld theme from the original Zelda and carries the constant notion that something is not quite right. While the melody is identical to that of the first Zelda's overworld theme, and the snare and bass provide a driving rhythm, a French horn plays an angry counter-melody, further adding to this uncanniness. The whole thing is wrapped up in the key of G minor. The Termina Field theme does sound somewhat adventurous, but it refuses to let the listener forget that the world will end in 3 days. Continuing with the trend of unsettling musical themes, the music for each of the 4 regions of Termina, the Southern Swamp, Snowhead Mountains, Great Bay, and Icona Valley, is some of the most eerie in the game. All 4 versions of the song share the same basic melody, giving them some sense of congruency, but each version has slight differences and uses different instruments, so the listener can never be too sure where the music is going next. The melody makes use of tritones, known as the Devil's Interval, for their dissonance, which further adds to the uncertainty of the music. Of the 4 songs we've taken a look at so far, 3 of them, Clocktown, Termina Field, and the 4 regions, have a distinct feeling of eeriness, like something is just slightly off. I believe that this is related to the uncanny valley, a psychological phenomenon in which things tend to look more appealing the more similar they are to a person, until they don't. There's a point where whatever you're looking at gives you feelings of uncanniness and repugnance. It almost looks like a human being, but there are certain traits that prevent it from appearing attractive. Koji Kondo has achieved a very similar effect in many of the songs he wrote for Majora's Mask. Both Clocktown and Termina Field take a well-established musical motif and distort it in a way that invokes fear and creepiness in the listener. The music for the 4 regions of Termina takes this a step further and presents a musical theme that is itself eerie and unsettling, and then distorts it between the 4 distinct versions of the song. Of course, Majora's Mask isn't just an eldritch game. Arguably the most memorable parts are the ones filled with anguish and suffering. The Goron hero, Darmani III, who perished attempting to save his village from the endless winter. The Zora guitarist Mikau, who passed away trying to rescue Lulu's eggs from the pirates. And Pamela, whose father has been turned into a Gibdo, leaving her alone in a valley infested with the undead. When Link meets each of these characters, he plays the Song of Healing on his ocarina to soothe them of their misery. The Song of Healing is among the most despondent pieces of music in Majora's Mask. The sorrowful piano melody uses tritones that clash with the underlying chords. These chords are often minor, which also makes the song sound depressing. The entirety of the song has a rubato that lingers on the last note of each phrase, and there's a persistent synth harmony that creates a hauntingly beautiful ambience throughout the piece of music. The Song of Healing is a perfect addition to the saddest parts of Majora's Mask, and it's no wonder the song is a favorite among fans of the game. Every corner of Termina is filled to the brim with despair, death, and grief, and these feelings are amplified tenfold during the final hours before the moon collides with the clock tower. Seeing the once lively clock town mostly deserted, with its few remaining residents sorrowfully accepting their fate, is truly among the most emotional moments in all of gaming history. Mudo, the head carpenter, is still denying that the moon will fall despite it being directly above him. Mayor Dutour remains in his office, lamenting that he could not save his own town. The swordsman, who previously said he would cut the moon into pieces, can be found cowering in the back of his school. The postman wants nothing more than to flee the town, but he can't because it isn't on his schedule. The music is the icing on the cake. No song recreates the feeling of hopelessness and of time running out better than the Final Hours theme. With the same somber synths that form the core of the game's soundtrack carrying the melody chords, a ghostly choir, and the near-constant church bells in the background, the Final Hours theme beautifully complements the gloomy, hopeless atmosphere of Clock Town in the final moments before Apocalypse. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask focuses very little on the core battle between Link and the villain compared to its predecessor. Instead, the game chooses to explore the relations between Link and the residents of the world he's trying to save. Each character offers Link a new side quest, a chance to relieve them of their anguish. However, no matter how many side quests you complete, you can never help everyone. If you start the side quest to reunite Anju and Kafi, a traveling Goron will be forced to sleep outside in the rain. Due to the limited amount of time, many side quests are mutually exclusive. They prevent you from completing certain other side quests and helping certain other people in the same cycle. The moon will destroy Termina in 3 days, obliterating all of your friends along with it. You cannot save everyone, but there's nothing stopping you from helping them. Despite the great sadness dispersed throughout The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, the game is riddled with just as many joyous moments as it is depressing ones. The game's focus on side quests allows it to explore the deep personal relationships between the people of Termina, and this adds an entirely new layer to the game. Majora's Mask is just as much about saving the world from a nearly omnipotent evil as it is about showing kindness to those in need of it. To reflect this, there are many ebullient songs in the game to counteract the sorrowful ones. Although the Clocktown theme gets darker as the 3 days progress, the variation of the song for the first day is very cheerful, perfect for a small but busy town just days before a festival. As mentioned before, the 6/8 time signature gives the first day a delightfully bright feeling. If anything, the first day serves to establish a sense of what Termina was like before the Skull Kid brought it under his influence. Seeing the happiness of the residents of Termina makes watching it all be demolished in moments at the end of the 3 days so much more impactful. Clocktown plays the biggest role in this, since it's where most of the side quests originate, and witnessing them having some semblance of hope due to your actions feels incredibly rewarding. course, not every song has to tie in directly to the story. For example, the Astral Observatory theme serves exclusively to establish a mood. It invokes feelings of childlike wonder, something that is exceedingly scarce in Termina, while still retaining some of that incongruity present in so much of this game's soundtrack. The heavenly choir and celestial synths layered over soothing piano bass creates a feeling of amazement after looking up at the stunning night sky. Astral Observatory also makes heavy use of seventh chords, such as B-flat major 7, E-flat major 7, and G7. Seventh chords are typically used to resolve back to the tonic, which in this case is F, but Astral Observatory instead uses many seventh chords in the middle of the song. Midway through the song, there is a movement from A to D minor. The C sharp in the A chord clashes with the key of F major, and D minor is the relative minor of the key of F major. These chords often deviate from the home key of F major, and when coupled with the minor chords, they create a feeling of tension that's present, but not strong enough to interfere with the central notion of childlike awe. If anything, these chords keep the listener thinking, restoring that same curiosity we all had once looking up at the night sky for the first time. The song concludes with a beautiful progression from C7 sus4 to C7, before looping back to the home chord of F. This transition from dominant seventh to tonic creates a sense of completeness and is part of how Koji Kondo managed to make a 40-second song so memorable. One of the songs that demonstrates the disparity between the two thematic halves of Majora's Mask the best is Farewell to Gibdos, which plays in the Music Box House. The Music Box House is located right in the middle of Icona Valley, easily the most disturbing location in the game due to the dissonant music and high quantity of Gibdos. The structure is home to Pamela, a little girl not much older than Link, and her father, who is turning into a Gibdo himself due to the Skull Kid's curse. When Link restores the river that originally ran past the house, however, the valley is filled with a surprisingly jolly song referred to as Farewell to Gibdos in the game. The song, of course, prompts all the Gibdos in the valley to retreat into the shadows, allowing Link to save Pamela and her father in one of the most bittersweet moments in the game. The song's instrumentation is reminiscent of that of a carnival merry-go-round, in stark contrast to the general atmosphere of Icona Valley. The bass establishes the lively 3/4 time signature and C major key signature, while the brisk melody further adds to the idea of a merry-go-round. After Link saves Pamela's father, he explains that he wrote the song in an attempt to drive away the Gibdos in the valley to make it a safe place for his daughter. Farewell to Gibdos is an example of how heartwarming Majora's Mask can be despite the apocalyptic plot. Continuing the trend of Link providing islands of hope in a sea of darkness, one of the most memorable side quests in the game is the quest for the Couple's Mask, where Link reunites the lost lovers Anju and Keffi. The quest involves delivering a message to the two that the other is waiting for them, prompting Anju to get into a fight with her mother over whether or not to evacuate with her family. The ending sequence of the quest depicts Anju waiting alone in the inn during the final hours, having decided to greet the morning together with her fiancé. The N64 version of the cutscene where they are finally reunited is completely silent, but the 3DS version uses Tattle and Tails' theme, which also plays at the end of the game when the two fairies are reunited. The song is very uplifting, fitting for a rejoining of loved ones. The instrumentation of strings and brass in the key of G major fills the listener with the idea that it'll all be okay in the end. This piece of music serves to communicate how much of a difference Link has made in Termina, to the extent that Anju and Keffi are just happy to have each other, even if it means giving up their lives. Despite the heavy suffering inflicted by the Skull Kid throughout Termina, Link always finds a way to heal the wounded souls. The Song of Healing is undoubtedly a sad song, but at the same time it feels calming and almost uplifting. This emotional duality is representative of much of Majora's Mask. Even through the darkest parts of the game, there is always that undying hope that everything will be alright. From Pamela and her father trying to make a home out of the wastes of Icona Valley, to Anju having faith that Keffi will return to her in the final hours, Link always finds a way to provide optimism to a dying world. The Song of Healing, despite its use of tritones, is in the key of C major, which is one of the happier sounding key signatures. The first section of the song uses descending chords from F to E and then from D minor 7 to the home key of C. These descending chords resolving on the tonic creates a feeling of stability despite the dissonant tritones in the melody. The second section of the song uses similar chords going from B flat major 7 to A minor 7 to G minor 7 before resolving once again on C. The usage of seventh chords here creates a very similar effect to Astral Observatory. However, before looping back to the start, the song ends on an E chord. Although the note E is in the chord C major, the G sharp clashes with the key signature. Of the three notes present in a C chord, C, E, and G, E feels the least resolved, invoking a feeling of incompleteness and ambiguity. The final song in the game is one of the most joyful, while simultaneously maintaining the oddness of Majora's Mask compared to its predecessor. The credits theme opens with a short intro foreshadowing the main melody of the second part of the song, before transitioning into a strange jazz section. This part of the song feels incredibly out of touch with the rest of the game's soundtrack. The synthesized vocals, minor piano chords, and saxophone harmony clash so much with all of the other songs in Majora's Mask. The second part of the song is the more important one. The cheery woodwind melody over the string and brass pads in the key of C major once again creates a joyful atmosphere showing how Link's actions have benefited Termina. To hammer this home, the credits are shown over a montage of the people who Link has helped during his time in Termina, from the postman, to the great fairies, to Romani and Cremia, to Gourmand, to Guru Guru, and finally, Pamela's father, who is shown embracing his daughter at the dawn of a new day. Anju and Kafi's wedding is shown, with some simply beautiful string and choir chords in the background. The credits theme nails the happier feeling present in Majora's Mask, and embodies the theme of restoring hope to a previously hopeless world. So far, we've taken a look at how the soundtrack of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask creates two distinct atmospheres within the game, reflecting the ways in which Link and the Skull Kid have positively and negatively affected the people of Termina. However, the Skull Kid is not the true villain in Majora's Mask. That would be the malevolent deity Majora, who possessed the Skull Kid when he stole the mask from the Happy Mask salesman. In fact, the story of the Skull Kid is actually very similar to that of Link. Both of them wound up in Termina after losing an old friend. Link came to Termina in search of the fairy Navi from Ocarina of Time, and the Skull Kid has lost his friends, the Four Giants. The Skull Kid was upset that his friends had left him in order to guard the four regions of Termina, and later befriended the fairies Tattle and Tail before stealing Majora's Mask. Link and the Skull Kid are surprisingly similar, they just reacted differently to losing a close friend. The actions of these two characters results in each of them gaining a mask with godly powers. Skull Kid, of course, stole Majora's Mask, which promptly possessed him and led to the great suffering present throughout the game. Link, however, obtains his mask in a more honest way. By completing side quests and helping people in Termina, Link is given a mask for each quest he completes. If he collects all of the masks, they can be traded in at the end of the game for the Fierce Deity's Mask, another mask with divine powers. The Fierce Deity's Mask makes the final boss fight against Majora a breeze, but also embodies the key difference between Link and the Skull Kid. The latter only ever hurt the inhabitants of Termina, but the former helped them and was rewarded for his charitable actions. The Fierce Deity's Mask is obtained on the moon, which is one of the few locations in Termina without any background music. This can be interpreted in a variety of ways, but the one that makes the most sense to me is the moon's surface is a sort of heaven. By healing the wounds inflicted by Majora, Link earned himself godly powers alongside a spot in heaven, which in this case is an idyllic meadow filled only with the sounds of birds chirping and a single tree in the center with children playing around it. I believe that these are representative of the Great Deku Tree and Link's Kokiri friends from Ocarina of Time. These children ask Link questions regarding his and the Skull Kid's experiences in Termina: friendship, hiding your emotions, and making people happy. The resemblance between the two central characters of Majora's Mask is echoed the most in one particular song. This song also happens to be a fan favorite, the Stone Tower Temple theme. Stone Tower Temple is the final dungeon in Majora's Mask, located far to the east in the Icona Valley. The Stone Tower Temple theme is the most melodic of the dungeon themes, with an ocarina carrying the main somber melody backed by tribal drums, a guitar countermelody, and a bassoon harmony. It is well known that these instruments are also the ones used by Link in each of his four forms: the Hylian ocarina, Goron drums, Zora guitar, and Deku pipes. This combination of instruments reflects how Link has brought peace to the other three corners of Termina. However, the inverted theme replaces Link's ocarina with Skull Kid's flute and introduces the same koto present in Majora's theme in Clocktown Day 3. The main Stone Tower Temple theme reflects both Link's literal climb to the top of the Stone Tower, as well as his metaphorical ascent into heaven for his good deeds. The inverted theme, on the other hand, reflects Skull Kid's descent into a figurative hell due to Majora's malevolence. If you're looking for a more in-depth explanation, the channel Save Data made a video explaining it in much greater detail than I could here. In short, the music of Majora's Mask, as well as its two central characters, represent two halves that, together, make up this hauntingly beautiful game. Desolate tracks such as Termina Field in the final hours demonstrate how the Skull Kid's anger resulted in the demise of Termina, while the more hopeful songs like Astral Observatory and Farewell to Gibdos displays the ways Link helped those who are suffering. From rescuing an innocent monkey from execution, to helping two lost lovers find each other again, to saving a little girl from being left alone in a land filled with monsters, Link spends his time in Termina helping as many people as he can. As much as you might want to, however, you cannot save everyone. In the penultimate scene of the credits, the Deku Butler is shown alone, mourning his son, one of the few people you simply cannot help. This complex duality of emotions has allowed The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask to remain a remarkably capturing and beautiful game even 20 years later.